All right. Thanks everyone for bearing with us as we get started this morning. It's always some technical difficulties for one reason or another. But welcome to our TMN Tuesday for August. Today we'll be talking about our Texas State Wildlife Action Plan, how you can help shape wildlife and habitat conservation in Texas. Our presenter today is Kelly Simon from Texas Parks and Wildlife, and she is our Wildlife Division Conservation Strategy Coordinator. Kelly is, oh, yes, thank you. Our virtual meeting etiquette today, kind of get back into the groove of things. If you're experiencing WebEx issues with WebEx, a reminder, this is our meetings are held in WebEx. And if you are experiencing issues with WebEx, such as you can't hear, we do have a help guide online for you. The chat function is open. Many of you have found that already as we've been talking about where you're viewing from today and how hot it is. So thank you for working in that. And then these are advanced training sessions for master naturalists. And so typically the session will run up to an hour, and you can count the time that you attend the session online as up to 1 hour of advanced training. We do record these. I am recording now. The recordings are always added to our website by the following day, if not before, and they will stay there for about a year. Master naturalists have about a year to up until the end of the year to view this recording for advanced training credit. As a reminder, attendees are not able to unmute during the WebEx event. Please use the chat to ask any questions of the presenter today. We have a unique setup today, which I'll talk about in a minute. The next slide. As always, we thank you for your participation in these events. If you would hover over the QR code, or we'll drop this survey link in the chat. But if you're able to take this survey, it helps us to remain eligible for funding that provides this survey, makes the webinar available to you. And next slide. All right, I mentioned our topic today is our State Wildlife Action Plan, how you can shape wildlife and habitat conservation in Texas. Our presenter today is Kelly Simon, and Kelly has had the great surprise of being awarded for the work she's doing with the State Wildlife Action Plan. And the work that she's presenting here today. And as luck would have it, she is receiving an Employee Recognition Award from Texas Parks and Wildlife for her work on the State Wildlife Action Plan over the past 2 years. And the award ceremony is actually happening right now as we speak. So she is there. She did record her session for today, and we are going to broadcast that recording for you here as part of the event. We are also recording that. Many of you know Kelly Simon already as a Texas Parks and Wildlife employee. She has been involved with the Master Naturalist program in its infancy when we got started. And Kelly actually does a little bit of a intro about herself and her history with Texas Parks and Wildlife in her presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to the presentation and let Kelly introduce herself further from there. And give us a second as we just get that presentation going.
Good morning. It's morning where I am. Thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Kelly Simont with Texas Parks and Wildlife as the State Wildlife Action Coordinator. And I'm here to provide a program on the State Wildlife Action Plan and how we are engaging with our partners, including Texas Master Naturalists, in order to better supply conservation throughout the state of Texas, and how you can participate. So I wanted to begin with our presentation. And if you'll bear with me for just a second, I'm not learning the technology, but I am trying to figure it out. Let's see if I can minimize this and move on to here. I think I'm good. All right, so just a little bit about who is talking with you right now. I have been with the department for about 30 years or so, spent some time in the old Region 2 and the Urban Wildlife Biology program. And now I'm delighted to be, worked also with Wildscapes and the Hummingbird Roundup early in my career. And now I'm delighted to be here as the Conservation Strategy Coordinator and the coordinator of the State Wildlife Action Plan. I wish I could be with you today live. So today our team who put together the original State Wildlife Action Plan for 2025 is being honored with an employee recognition award in the team category for our work with the State Wildlife Action Plan. So I think I'll amend this title to be the award-winning State Wildlife Action Plan. And we're delighted about that as well. So today we're presenting on how Texas has modernized the State Wildlife Action Plan in 2025 and of course now in 2026 to make better decisions about conservation for our rare species of wildlife. All right, so why is it important that we do this prioritization process in the first place? Well, in 2016, a national blue ribbon panel studied what it would really cost. What would it really cost to conserve wildlife that are non-game species at a commensurate level, at a level that we spend right now on our game species, with which we've had extraordinary success in conservation over the last 100 years. And they estimated that at the time, it would take about $1.3 billion each year nationally to support that level of conservation for all of our most rare species or our species of greatest conservation need. In inflation-adjusted dollars, that equates to about $1.69 billion. In 2025, the federal program that provides the majority of funding for rare species and conservation received about $72 million. And that $72 million, of course, is spread across all United States and territories, including indigenous nations. So that for Texas, that comes out to a lot less than we need, so about $2.7 million in Texas. So what that means is that we got to be very careful about how we spend our conservation dollars. Really good projects are not going to be able to be funded. So we want to enact a system that ensures that our most impactful actions can take place. And so that's why we have our State Wildlife Action Plan in place in general, because we need to prioritize our spending, but also because we want to be able to provide that information for all of Texas. So that $2.7 million, that comes from the federal reserves, not the federal reserves, the federal budget, and it's presented to the state for actions. And so what we do is we usually pass that through to universities, landowners, et cetera, who are doing conservation and research on species of greatest conservation need. But that doesn't mean that that's all the conservation that happens throughout Texas. We want to ensure that Texans have the information that they need to make really good decisions about the conservation that they elect to do on their own property. So the State Wildlife Management Plan, of course, it helps us spend our apportionment of federal funding, but it also helps any Texan who wants to conserve throughout the state. So that's what the State Wildlife Action Plan is designed to do. It guides our federal funding, the spending that we have from our federal funding source. And you might hear us talk about SWIG, that State Wildlife Grant Program, and that's that $2.7 million that comes to Texas. It also helps do strategic prioritization of research and conservation priorities for rare species throughout Texas, whether it's through SWIG programs or other granting programs that we have through the state. It helps us prioritize exactly what we do through our wildlife program, but also it's supposed to help make landowners, give landowners the information they need to make conservation decisions with their own limited resources. So what is in the State Wildlife Action Plan? Well, we include the stuff that's required federally. So this is a federal requirement. All states that would like to receive state wildlife grant money have to put in place these elements. They have to identify species of greatest conservation need and their habitat, identify threats to their success or their survival, identify conservation actions that could be effective in mitigating those threats, and include monitoring plans that will ensure that we understand the success or failure of different conservation actions. Since the plans were first developed 20 years ago, state wildlife action plans have become the foundation for wildlife conservation planning across the country. They give us a common language to talk with our colleagues across the states, so that we're able to enact best management practices and policies that are being proven successful with our neighbors and partners across the nation. It also helps guide how we use our state wildlife grant funding, and that's that federal funding program I referred to earlier that's dedicated to conserving rare species. So the first State Wildlife Action Plan, the first thing that State Wildlife Action Plan does is identify those species of greatest conservation need. And you'll oftentimes hear us refer to those as SGCN. So that's species of greatest conservation need. I'm from the government. We are contractually required to use acronyms, even when plain speech would be easier to understand. So we have to name them. They are any species that are in need of help. So whether it's game or non-game, regardless of the type of wildlife they are, whether they're mammals or birds or reptiles or amphibians or invertebrates or fish in the ocean or in fresh water or plants, we are able to identify any of those species as species of greatest conservation need. So the goal is to act early, so before they become threatened or endangered, to prevent the need for listing at all. So remember that we can call a species endangered even though it's not federally or state listed as endangered. So understand that when we talk about listing, that's that formal process of becoming a listed species that is considered legally threatened or endangered, either at the federal or at the state level. But what SGCN are species, hopefully, that we've gotten before that listing level so that we can prevent the need to list them entirely. There's no regulatory restrictions associated with SGCN. The designation only helps us unlock federal funding for conservation. Our State Wildlife Action Plan was first drafted in 2003 in the aughts. Back then, it tried to be a complete account of all the conservation that we thought we should do. It was written kind of like a textbook. It was very, very informative. But because it read like a textbook, most people didn't read it cover to cover. And they looked into it for species for which they were interested. So they didn't really it was difficult to get a larger picture of conservation. And I should say it was groundbreaking at the time. It's groundbreaking now. This is nothing disparaging about the State Wildlife Action Plans of the early aughts. It is just, we just want to note how it's changed over time based on how people were using them and the limitations that they faced. For the 2025 update, Texas didn't just revise an old plan. We built a process that helps us make better decisions, we hope, about how we spend our limited conservation dollars. It brings together data on species, habitats, and threats so that we can see what's at risk, where to focus, and what actions will make the biggest difference. And it's built to be used, not just by us, but by our partners, landowners across the state, school kids who are interested in species native to Texas, anybody really who's curious about the species of Texas that are in need of conservation help, and even just a better understanding of the wildlife and habitat of Texas. Going back to an overview of the State Wildlife Action Plan, our plan is science-driven, has science-driven conservation priorities, and we're really, really proud of that. We moved from well, I'll mention that here in a second, but everything we've done and included in the plan is grounded in current research. That begins with how we identify an SGCN in the first place. In 2003, lacking any better methodology or information and really relying on information that people provided to us on a species by species basis, we relied pretty much on expert opinion to inform our highest priority. So what we did is we gathered the foremost biologists in the room on birds, on amphibians, on reptiles, on plants, on invertebrates, on mammals, etc. And we put them all in different rooms and we asked them to hash out what the priorities should be. But now we've had much more, we have a much more repeatable, defensible, objective decision tree. And everything that goes into making that decision is featured right there on the species information page. One of the biggest challenges in conservation is knowing when we have enough information to act. And that's what our knowledge gap analysis helps us do. It gives us a clear and repeatable way to decide whether a species needs more research or is ready for conservation action. So if key information is missing, we focus on research. And if we have enough information, we can now more easily shift to conservation. I want to spend just a second on this and go off script a little bit. So this is the conservation gap analysis is the project that we're working with Texas Master Naturalist volunteers through the virtual volunteer fair that began with a virtual volunteer fair a couple of months ago. And this is what these volunteers are contributing to. About half of our species within the State Wildlife Action Plan currently have a knowledge gap analysis associated with them. But that leaves about half of our species completely unassessed. We don't know what we don't know about those species. The knowledge gap analysis is designed to help us understand what gaps there are in our knowledge that are preventing us from understanding how to move into that conservation focus realm. So we got to know enough information about a species before we start acting. But in the past, what we had a tendency to do is to kind of not know when it was time to stop putting money into research and start putting money into conservation. So we ended up maybe learning way too much, not way too much. You can always, here's the thing, you can always learn more about a species, and that information is valid and important. But remember, we're working with $2.7 million a year to try to learn enough about each species to get conservation success. If we keep pouring money into research, we may never move into the conservation realm. So it's important to know when we know enough to begin moving toward management. That doesn't mean that the research that's done over and above that is not valuable. It's invaluable. Anyway, but it does mean that we have to prioritize how we spend, and so we're going to cut off at a particular point and move on into conservation. So the project that we put together a couple months ago and we're currently working on is designed to help get more of those species run through that knowledge gap analysis process so that we can see where are we and where do we need to focus our conservation efforts. So we look at 7 different variables, and if each of those variables has a it's good enough ranking, which is 3 out of 5, we move on to the next variable until we have all of those variables filled and we can move into the conservation space. All right, So the benefits of the knowledge gap analysis, it's really the backbone of our plan. It helps us document progress toward conservation. It helps us clarify meaningful research needs. So where are we going to begin doing research where we have the most benefit to wildlife species? We're going to break an endless research cycle. We have kind of get into that cycle of funding more and more research, so that we're just, at some point, we're just documenting the species decline over time, and watching it get closer and closer to a critical point or worse. So we want to be sure to break it where it's where we've got the most valuable information that we need, where we can move into that conservation space. And it helps us efficiently allocate funding. In other words, it helps us know when it's time to stop studying a species and start actively helping it. That is, stop studying a species. That doesn't mean that everybody has to stop studying the species, but as a wildlife management organization that's responsible for conservation, we have to know when it's time to move into that conservation space. Finally, I want to mention that we've got this really cool new tool that's in the beginning, that we are beginning to roll out, called our State Wildlife Action Plan Conservation Opportunities Area tool. It helps us focus our conservation and restoration on places on the Earth, and it's a spatial decision support model. It's not a map of all of our rare species. And it's never going to be complete. But what it does do is it pulls together variables like habitat, threats to conservation, connectivity, and species data to show what the potential for conservation action could be. So when you dive deeper into a specific place on the Earth in the Conservation Opportunity Area tool, which also includes native fish conservation areas and our Coastal Opportunity Conservation Index, when you get closer, when you get a closer view of that, what you see are areas that are identified as having high potential for conservation, and also areas that are high potential for action. So you're looking at areas that are very pristine, which are just mostly preservation and continued conservation, and areas that could be very high value conservation areas with just a little bit of work. So those are the things that we are really excited about being able to see spatially on a map. It allows us to prioritize things like if we're given the opportunity to purchase parkland, for example, or WMA land. You may have heard that Parks and Wildlife has been able to make some pretty significant purchases of parkland and also wildlife management area land. And those were all informed with the State Wildlife Action Plan and Conservation Opportunity Areas tools to help better understand where the opportunities for conservation are greatest, where we get the biggest bang for our real estate dollar. What's included in the model are not all of our wildlife species. As I mentioned earlier, about half of our species are completely unassessed. We have very little information on them. But for those species that we have, for which we have much more information on habitat needs, what their threats are, what conservation actions are appropriate, and where they occur on the Earth, these are the species that we're able to use in our model. So that includes 432 animal species, 321 plant species, and 194 what we call plant communities. That is a unique association of plants associated with specific soils and habitats that we identify as a community, where we can see declines or improvements over time within that community. So I'm proud to say that Texas's web app is the first fully online state wildlife action plan in the country. Now, there are other tools that are online in other states. Ours was the first that was 100% fully digital and available to all people through this digital tool. So we're really excited to be able to offer that. The entire plan is on, so this is a view of the opening the page that you get to when you open it up. The whole plan is online, it's searchable, and it's ADA compliant. We worked very hard to make it easy for anyone who is interested in conservation in Texas to explore and to use. There are a number of different ways to explore it, but I'm going to show you an easy way in. So I like to go in through this explore area. The navigate area is more like a traditional book. So you see chapter markings on the left and text on the right. If that's how you would like to access the information, it's all in that navigate area. But if you want to kind of dig around in it and explore different species and stuff, I recommend starting with the explore button. When you click on it, you will open up all the species of greatest conservation need, and you just kind of scroll through them, right? You can go page at a time and see all of them. There's 1,176, I believe, species of greatest conservation need, and you'll see all of them right there in that explore area. At a glance, you can see which species are found only in Texas, if it has that little Texas symbol up in the top right-hand corner of the card. This is the quick view area, by the way. You also get what kind of organism are and what kind of organism they are, what their name is, and different measures of how common they are. And we're excited also because this is the first time we've been able to offer a state wildlife action plan with pictures, so you can see what those species look like. Not all species have pictures, and not all the pictures are great. So if you have pictures of wildlife and you like to contribute them, there is a way for you to do that. We also learn whether the species needs more research or whether we're ready to begin taking actual on-the-ground conservation action. And if you want to find more about a species, you just click on it. So this is the quick view card. When you click on that card, you get taken to the species more complete information page. You see a larger photo, more information, and then as you scroll down, so this is mostly a repeat of most of the information that you saw on the quick card, but then as you scroll down, you get more information. You see one of the features in the plan is called Barriers to Conservation Analysis. That's what we called our knowledge gap analysis, just to make it a little bit easier to understand. It helps us decide whether a species needs. This is our KGA, right? This is what we use to help decide whether a species needs more research or whether we're ready to move forward with conservation actions. You can see that this is the. I'm going to back up one. Here we go. This is the cactus wren. Notice there. Let's see. Can I highlight? I think I can. Laser pointing. Here we go. You see here that this is a conservation-focused species. The cactus wren is. And it's repeated down here that it's a conservation-focused species, so we know it has been assessed. And all the metrics are above a 3 or above. That's why they're all green. So that means that are we going to spend more money on research for cactus wren? Doesn't mean that research wouldn't be beneficial to some priorities, but we know that for our purposes, for the purposes of conservation, it's time to start spending money on conservation of cactus wren. We can also read about its habitat and even dig a little bit into specific habitat types. So here we see that the cactus wren can be found in desert scrub habitats, along with shrublands and developed areas. So there's desert scrub habitats right there. If you click on that, you get taken to the desert scrub habitat page. And so you can learn all about what does that mean, what kind of habitat is that, and other species that can be found there. So species within this habitat. You can also learn how many species have been assessed, or what percentage of species in that habitat have been assessed, and whether they are conservation or research focused. So in desert scrub habitat, we can see that about 9% of the species in there are ready for conservation. About 30% are still research focused. So this tells me that if I have a piece of habitat that's in desert scrub, it would be worth investing in research on that in that habitat. But let's get back to the cactus wren information sheet again. Here it is. This is the information sheet for the cactus wren. And we'll scroll past the knowledge gap analysis and barrier analysis and habitat review and get to the next element there. which is the mapping, the heat map. So this is a heat map of where people have documented the cactus wren. Okay, you've heard us talk about iNaturalist for years now, right? Please put information into iNaturalist. Please, if you're a birder, also put information in eBird. And we tell you that we use that information. And here's one example of how we use that information. All the observations in the heat map area for conservation for all of our species in species of greatest conservation need, those observations were input into iNaturalist or eBird. They're publicly available information, so we can feature them publicly in this heat map. It's pretty cool to be able to see where these species have been observed and where they are expected. So that gray line is their expected range. The observations have been made with those red and kind of fuzzy dot things. So the more observations that have been found in the area, the larger and bigger those dots appear. All right, if we scroll down a little bit further, we also see the threats and recommended actions for the cactus wren. Since the cactus wren is a conservation-focused species, we want to understand the threats that it faces and what we can do to address them. So we see here that threats are listed in the yellow, and then actions are the actions that go along with that threat or that are supposed to mitigate those threats are featured in green. Sometimes if we have information on a justification or more explanation about a particular threat, it's listed in that red area. So it's given a little bit more information about what that threat means. So you'll notice that the threats have a common language, right? So it's a database. So we have to assign a threat into certain categories. So they'll be kind of generic at the top level, get a little bit more specific as you work down, and the actions are listed the same way. But we're trying to more and more produce more justifications that are a little bit more clearly stating specifically what it is that we're talking about. But in general, you're able to use this database to layer species that share common threats and that share common actions so that you can do a better job of creating a wildlife management plan for a particular piece of property that requires those actions or threats. Okay, so this is just me saying, oh yeah, the threats are in yellow, the actions are in green. Not all species have associated threats and actions, and we're working with our partners, including Texas Master Naturalists, to help outline or help assess more species through that KGA process to determine what those threats and actions could be. All right, so let's go back to this is the main page. When you go into the Species Explorer, this is the main page that you'll see where you got all your species. And how would you work in that exploration to try to answer different answer different questions about species and habitat? Well, we've got this great tool. It's a filter tool, whereas our Texas Natural Diversity Database is the repository for most of this information. In order to query that database, you have to have knowledge of SQL, which some people in this room do, I'm sure. But generally, we have our database administrator put together a SQL statement that helps query that database. Well, we put together some of the more common searches that you might do that you can put together in any number of different ways to get different answers to questions. And we'll show you kind of how to use that. Oh, I put a video together of this. So, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and start the video so that you can see how it's used. We're going to start up here by clicking on the filters. Let's see, it's not going to let me do it while I'm doing a pointer. Let's do that one. There we go. Starting with the filters, you're going to select a species. Oh, you know what? Before we start, let me tell you, as you recall, the knowledge gap analysis is how we prioritize which species need to receive more research funding and targets precisely what kind of research will provide the most benefits. So let's see how we can use the knowledge gap analysis and our filters to help a graduate student or any student of conservation who wants to develop a research study that's interesting to them and one that they can get funding for. So they can use the Texas State Wildlife Action Plan to help. and they'll use the filter function to get started. So first, they're going to indicate that they are interested in reptiles and amphibians, and they're going to further move to species that are research need. They're going to leave the threatened and endangered species, I think, as they are, because it's more difficult to well, they want to, yeah, actually, sorry, they want to not have threatened or endangered species because those require additional permits, and as a student, those are difficult to get. You can get them, but they are interested in a faster research project. They want to focus on species that are found in Smith County because that's where, or Brewster County, sorry. And so with just a few clicks, they get 5 different species on which they can focus. Oh, sorry. And let's see what the research topics they could focus on. The Texas State Wildlife Action Plan now shines a bright light. So I moved on a little bit faster than we needed to. Okay, so they got 5 different species. Let's start from there. 5 different species on which they can focus, and they're kind of interested in one of those species, the Western Massasauga. So they click on it to see what kind of research they might be interested in. So look at that. They've got 3 different topics: condition of population, individual needs, and population needs. If you want to know a little bit more about that, you can read up here as they're looking what do those 3 categories mean, and they can also go down into the narrative portion of the SWAP to find out even more information. But anyway, this finely tunes those 3 different research areas that they can work on. So let's go to the Explore Species page for our next species, our next case study. I'm looking at the time just to make sure I'm doing here. Oh yeah, there it is, those 3 things. Okay. And we can see how the State Wildlife Action Plan can help a land manager plan out the best conservation, the actions to take, and where they should take them. So we're going to start again at the Explore portal, and from here, again, they're going to use the filter tool to narrow things down. And let's see what they do. I'm going to go to Explore, and they want conservation. So the landowner now wants conservation focused species within a particular county. What's county? Smith. This time it's Smith County because that's where their property is located. I mean, they're mostly interested in grassland and savanna habitats. They want to do things like, what do they want to do? Oh, land and water management. Okay, that's good. And so there they are able to fine-tune a species list of a list of species on which they might want to focus their conservation plan. So in just a few clicks, the query gives us 6 species that a landowner might want to focus on. When you look at each of the species that meet those criteria, you see that you've got some complementary conservation actions in 3 of the species. The western box turtle, yellow-billed cuckoo, and Townsend's big-eared bat. So those might feature prominently in our conservation plan. So all of these species benefit from riparian or streamside restoration, and all use grassland, savanna, and streamside habitats. So we're going to look at how those might be implemented within a particular piece of property. So they're going to go to the conservation opportunity area, and using the COA, they can identify and prioritize restoration of streamside and grassland habitats that'll benefit those 3 species and every other local species that uses those habitats. So they're going to focus their conservation actions on these areas. Let me get my highlighter again, laser pointer. So we got streamside habitats in the vertical lines, grassland in the diagonal lines, and where it overlaps, it's got this patterning. So these are the areas that the landowner is going to look at to prioritize some conservation actions. So it's no longer this big, humongous, 1,000-acre property. Now it's a very specific area where they can focus on conservation of those 3 species. All right, so finally, I want to highlight how the 2025 State Wildlife Action Plan is designed to be transparent and collaborative. And this is where our partnership with Texas Master Naturalists really gets to shine. So this is a 10-year plan. What about missing information or outdated information, information that's or information that's incomplete? So fortunately, it's not a static website. It's a working system. So if you have a partner account, and every Texas Master Naturalist is eligible to apply for a partnership account as a Texas Master Naturalist, you can directly help shape conservation priorities. Now, I hope you, if you're interested in the KGA project, I'll give you information at the end on how you might decide to join that. But otherwise, you can also contribute information directly in the project. If you contribute through the Texas Master Naturalist KGA project, you'll also be helping contribute to a publication on how to use KGAs that will be used by other states in order to implement a similar program in their state. So let's see what it would look like. Now I realize, so let's say that I'm a researcher or a partner who has recently done work on plain spotted skunk, and I'm looking at the barrier readiness scores, and I realize that I've recently read a paper that could contribute to the barrier condition of population. So I select the Contribute Information button at the top of the page, which only appears, by the way, if you're signed in with your partner account. You can click that button right there. And you can go to the partner portal, or what we call the workbench for the plain spotted skunk. And you can look at the barriers. You can look at a number of things. You can look at habitat, location, threats and actions for that species, and barriers to knowledge, which is the KGA for this species. So I'm going to look at that. If I want to update the KGA barriers, I select Condition of Populations Barrier. And I provide, the partner is able to review the information we currently have and then submit their contribution and support their proposal for that barrier or for all the barriers within that species. But you got to include your citations for published research, and we focus only on primary research, that is original research, and things like federal species status assessments, etc. And you would learn all about how to do that in a training that we do on KGA, KGA construction that is offered right now in the advanced training section of the Texas Master Naturalist website. You can take that training and apply to have some assignments through that project. All right, so we are looking at a proposed value. So they have, you see the current value over here. They entered in the proposed value over here on the right. So they're proposing changing it from a rating of a 2 to a rating of 3, and why that is, and then published research that supports that evaluation. So the suggested update shows up in the partner's personal log of workbench submissions. This is a log of all the submissions that this person has done. And the appropriate Texas Parks and Wildlife staff member will review it, or will delegate a research member to review it, and they will either approve it or decline it or request more information. Generally, they approve it or request more information. Partners see exactly where they are in the process right here. There's no black box that you throw your suggestion into. They can see the suggestion progress from submission to decision. So you see here, if one of the reviewers had said that, well, I need a little bit more information, that would show up here, and you would be able to view that and have a conversation with that reviewer back and forth through like a message board type of a portal. Okay. I want to mention also that, so I've referred a couple of times to the Texas Master Naturalist KGA advanced training, or not advanced training, sorry, virtual volunteer fair event that we did a couple months ago. And through that, after that, we had a training to provide information on how to do KGAs. They are, we don't want this to be daunting for anybody. It can be kind of daunting. We give you access to 3 different portals where you can investigate primary literature at your leisure, at your computer, and make some decisions on that. There's no time limit. We do have benchmarks for when we're going to be reviewing different groups of KGA's submissions. And our first one was August 1st, where we received, I think, 15 complete species assessments, which is fantastic, because these are 15 species assessments that probably would not have gotten done if we were relying solely on the wildlife biologists at Texas Parks and Wildlife to get them done, because they're really focused on those priority species, and they just can't expand their priorities with the current resources that we have. But through the Texas Master Naturalist Project, we've got 59 total species assignments. 32 of those are unique, and we have 27 people assigned through the Texas Master. So 27 of your Texas Master Naturalist peers are working on this project actively, and we have another 50 or so that we hope will join when situation allows them to, because they have been trained. But for now, we are just thrilled to have 27 master naturalists working on from across the state of Texas, working on knocking out those KGAs that otherwise may never be able to be done. So the last thing I wanted to mention is, of course, the 2025 State Wildlife Action Plan is ready for action. It's completed. It was well under our estimated budget, which we're proud to say, and it is already being used. We've already brought the work to the national stage. We've presented it to state and national conservation meetings, where it has received wild acclamations. As I mentioned, it is award-winning. And most recently, an international conservation group used our SWAP data tools to identify conservation-focused species that share complementary conservation actions in a particular area in North Texas. And these species and actions will now guide a locally driven conservation campaign in North Texas. I'm extraordinarily proud of that. We are also able to use those conservation actions that are listed for species. One of those actions is awareness raising. So we've been able to work with our PBS program, Texas Parks and Wildlife PBS program, and our Texas Parks and Wildlife magazine to feature SGCN that are in need of awareness raising, not just those sexy big species that you see featured sometimes, but also some of the smaller species that might get overlooked that can benefit from awareness raising. And in fact, the organization that I mentioned earlier about the North Texas organization, they were so excited about how easily they could generate the information they needed that they brought the Texas State Wildlife Action Plan back to their international partners as an example of what modern conservation planning can look like. So Texas is leading the way with state wildlife action plans. This plan is digital, it's science-driven, it's transparent, and it's totally collaborative. So I want to invite you to join us and take a look at the Texas Master Naturalist, Texas State Wildlife Action Plan. You can use that QR code with your phone to access it on your mobile device, and it works really well right there. You can also go to TexSwap.org on your desktop to go to the portal as well. I invite everyone to test out the 2025 State Wildlife Action Plan. Let us know how it's going, either at the address here or using the QR code I mentioned. And I invite anybody who's involved in the media or interested in creating more awareness for our species of greatest conservation need. Maybe you write a newsletter for your chapter. Maybe you are involved in your neighborhood awareness raising campaigns through newsletters or websites or Facebook groups or Instagram groups or whatever it is. If you have the ability to raise awareness for some of our species, take a look at some of the species that are in need of awareness raising in your area. You can use those filter tools to go county to type in your county action of awareness raising, and you can look at those species and feature them as you can. This concludes my presentation. I would invite any questions, except that I'm recorded. So thank you so much for inviting me to the Texas Master Naturalist Tuesdays, TMN Tuesdays. I am delighted to talk with you. And also, you can reach me at my email address. And Michelle, if you wouldn't mind, I didn't put it on the website. I'm sorry, or Hannah. And welcome back, Hannah. I don't get to say this to you live, but I'm delighted to hear that you're back from leave, and hope everybody is doing well. I look forward to seeing you very soon. And if somebody would throw my email address in the chat, I sure would appreciate it. And I'm delighted to have any discussions. If you're interested in participating in the Texas Master Naturalist TMN or KGA project, please do drop me a line, and I can get you in contact with the training that we did, and also show you how to request your first species. So thank you so much. Look forward to seeing everyone soon, and happy trails. Bye-bye.
All right. It was as if Kelly was right here presenting with you. Again, just to reiterate that this was a recorded presentation due to the award that Kelly and team are receiving for their amazing work on this project happening now. The luncheon awards ceremony is going on right now. So thank you so much to Kelly for pre-recording this session. I have captured the additional questions you have in the chat, and we will get with her after this session and get those extra questions answered and added to our website tomorrow. So as a reminder, this session is being recorded, has been recorded, and will be up on our website as early as tomorrow. So we'll have the recording, we'll try to include the presentation, and then answers to the questions that have been asked but unable to be answered today in the chat. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Stay cool wherever you are, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our next TMN Tuesday. Thanks again.